Hello, my name is Paul Dwyer. I'm CEO of Team InfoSec and I'm here today to tell you a little bit about security governance and a related service we have called iSafe. Okay, the rising tide of cybercrime and the threats to critical information assets mandate that boards of directors and senior executives are fully engaged at the governance level to ensure the security and integrity of those resources. That's a quote from the IT Governance Institute, a little bit of a mouthful there, but looking simply at this, security governance is the board's responsibility to all aspects of information assurance. Let's talk a little bit more about this. If we look here at a typical security management framework, we can see that each board of directors within an organisation has a number of input drivers. Their business requirements, their regulatory requirements in relation to information assurance, and they have to evaluate, monitor and direct all activities within their organisation in relation to information assurance. And they may happen within the CISO's office, they may happen within the IT department, or they may happen within other aspects of the business, including marketing and legal. Let's look at the first stage of things, the input drivers. Okay, so what are input drivers? Input drivers may be from a business perspective. They may be things such as ISO 27001. A lot of organisations these days are mandated to have that. There may be PCI for the payment card industries. Again, in a lot of areas it's mandated to have that if you're a merchant in any way. And of course business continuity is a must-have. Other regulatory requirements may be things such as the Data Protection Act, Sarbanes-Oxley or HIPAA. Okay, now let's look at the board's responsibilities themselves in relation to security governance. As I mentioned, they need to be able to direct, they need to be able to monitor, and they need to be able to evaluate all activities in relation to information assurance. And there's various frameworks and standards that already exist in relation to these things that can be useful and can be used within an organisation. But these often exist within silos within an organisation and aren't taken holistically. Those things include ISO 27001 for information security management systems, ISO 38500 for IT governance, BS 112 for data privacy, and BS 2599 in relation to business continuity. Not an exhaustive list there, there's many hundreds of actually standards in relation to frameworks that can be used for these various aspects. But we take a holistic approach, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that in just one moment. So now let's look at information assurance. Well, what is information assurance? Information assurance is managing the risks to the asset. And what are those risks? Those risks can be to the confidentiality, the integrity, or the availability of that information asset. Okay, now that is when you're processing it, when you're storing it, or when you're transmitting it. Okay, so you can be doing three various activities with an information asset, and at all times you need to be able to manage the risks to the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability to that asset. And it's to all forms of data. Most important to remember that these days. It's not just digital data, it's not just database, it's not just files, it's all data, manual data included. Okay, so what's involved? Well, there's three things, or three aspects involved within any organisation. Of course there's technology. Of course there's people, and then there's processes. And those three things combined are what need to be controlled or managed within an organisation in able to be achieve information assurance or security governance. Okay, so this is why we brought together today a service which we call iSafe. iSafe is short for Information Security Assurance Framework for Enterprises. Putting it short, it's a way of an organisation achieving security governance or managed information assurance within their own organisation. And let's look at how it's actually invoked or prepared within an organisation. We put together this service from the requirements of our clients. Our senior partners within our firm have combined hundreds of years experience in information security, and we looked at exactly what the businesses are requiring these days in relation to these types of security services. And no longer good enough are just information security audits delivering lists of findings and lists of recommendations. Organizations are requiring something a little bit more specifically tailored for their organization that can actually bring them to the next step. So here you can see the 8 steps involved in this service. Okay, step 1 is what we like to call profiling an organization, or corporate profiling. This involves us understanding your business. We are security experts and we know security backwards, but we don't know your business. So it's most important that we ascertain exactly what is appropriate for your business. So at this stage we will look at things, for example, what are your regulatory drivers? What are your business drivers? What's the culture of your organisation, the size, the location, the business model, the objectives, the corporate structure. We'll also look at the business climate, any aspirations your business has, and of course we'll take into account any budgetary constraints. Taking all those factors into account, we move on to the next stage. At this stage we look at what are your information assets. Okay, we will look at those from a digital perspective, manual perspective, and all types of other information assets that may exist within your particular type of business, your sector. We look at the location of those assets. What jurisdiction do they fall into? Who are the owners of those assets? Or any specific compliance issues or concerns that may be appropriate to those particular information assets. At the next stage, we move on to reviewing people. As I mentioned, there's three things involved here. You've people, you've processes, and technology. So to perform any sort of status check or assessment or put together any plans for an organisation, it's important to understand those three facets. So at this first stage, we look at reviewing people. We perform interviews with key personnel. We take a physical observations of them in their day-to-day work practice. We'll review any security framework that may exist, either ad hoc or formal. We'll also review the roles and responsibilities in relation to information assurance within the organisation. At the next stage, we move on to the actual review of information assurance processes. Here in this chart you can see that there are actually 4 different levels generally of paperwork, if you like, in relation to information assurance. Well, we look at those and existing, as I say, ad hoc or formal policies and processes that may exist, but we also look at other areas. We look at organisation charts, we look at network diagrams, security policies, recent audits, incident reports, but we also take into account future plans. We take into account any future projects you may have, any other changes that may be up and coming within this environment. The next stage is where we look at the actual technology within the organisation. Here we'll ascertain from our previous stages any recent audits that may have taken place. We'll also have looked at any technical diagrams or infrastructure related information artifacts that may exist in relation to explaining to us technically where you stand in relation to risk at the moment. If need be, we will also perform some technical assessments at this stage. They may be from a public-facing perspective to see how secure your perimeter is within your network, or they may be indeed from an internal perspective to see what your weaknesses are internally. Recent Gartner statistics said that 70% of all threats were from insiders. That was not to say that 70% of your employees are creating threats, but of those that were realised, 70% of them came from internally. We also look at issues such as data leakage and areas like that from an insider threat point of view. Other types of technical audits or assessments will also be considered at this stage. And we then take those findings, blend them with the review of people and processes so that we have a holistic picture of exactly where your organisation stands. The next stage is where we will move into our threat assessment stage. Here's where we'll actually ascertain the perceived threats and risks to those information assets. We do this outlining what the threats are, outlining what the likelihood is, and the consequence. So we don't just simply say this is high risk, this is medium risk. We work out metrics or a scientific way as much as possible in order to do that. And that's quite straightforward in relation to technical risks, maybe not so easy or so subjective in relation to other perceived risks in relation to people and processes within an organisation. And that's why we involve key stakeholders at this stage within the organisation. Because here we can actually work out the qualitative risk, we can work out the quantitative risk, and we can also work out the risk treatment or the recommendations, if you like, in order to how to deal or mitigate or accept these risks within your particular organisation. It's at this stage, some organisations, and a lot of our clients have asked us to, as we're obviously looking at the maturity of an information security management system within the organisation, they may have other separate projects running on the side, for example, a 27001 implementation or a PCI compliance project. So at this stage, we can actually draw up gap reports, which may help facilitate those projects moving on. And we can identify any specific gaps in relation to specific standards or frameworks as an add-on if a particular client requires that. So at the next stage, we have to develop our strategic roadmap. Okay, so this is a major difference between this and any other service that you'll see out there, because we don't just engage with an organisation just to assess you, just to tell you, oh, this is what we found, good luck, off you go. That is not our approach with this. What we want to do is actually develop a specific roadmap for you going forward. And we do that by outlining, first of all, in our findings and recommendations report, what areas we reviewed, how we did that review, what our findings were, and what our recommendations are. So all pretty standard up until this point. But then we develop a strategic roadmap. In this roadmap, we will outline your short term. Okay, so this is your short-term plan. Here we will outline any urgent issues, we'll outline any quick wins for you to plug any gaps or move things ahead within your organisation, and we'll also identify any short-term actions you may be to take to save costs in relation to information assurance within your organisation. The next stage of that report is the long-term stage. Within this, we will work on any goals and objectives, the strategy and milestones, and again, any long-term cost savings your organisation can make within information assurance. The next stage is where we will actually have an interactive strategy workshop with your key people that are responsible for information assurance. Here we present all the findings and recommendations report, the short-term strategy and the long-term project plan or road plan in relation to information assurance. This is as I say, an interactive session, so this is here where we can guide, where we can, if you like, back up our findings and we can explain them in more detail, and we can help the organisation. The key objective of this is to help the organisation work out exactly what their next steps are in relation to this. Okay, so here you can see that there's an advantage or key aspects of Team InfoSec in relation to our experience, our expertise, our value, our professionalism and our independence. But enough of that propaganda. If you really have any concerns in relation to information security, would like to know more about security governance or iSafe, please don't hesitate to contact us at teaminfosec.com. Thank you very much.